Get up. That seat is for assets, not useless liabilities like you. Go wait in the kitchen with the rest of the help. My father's voice cut through the ambient jazz like a gunshot. It was 11:30 on New Year's Eve, and the ballroom of his mansion was filled with people he needed to impress. Investors in tuxedos, local politicians, business partners, and right in the middle of it all, my 9-year-old daughter, Mina, was sprawled on the marble floor. Victor, my father, had just physically shoved her out of a chair because a wealthy angel investor was walking toward the table. He didn't ask her to move. He didn't guide her away. He pushed her. Mina looked up at me, eyes wide, lip trembling, waiting for me to scream, waiting for me to make a scene. But I didn't. I walked over, helped her stand, and dusted off her dress. I checked her knees, bruised, but not broken. In my head, a red light started flashing. In my line of work, we call this a stop-loss point. It is the moment an investment becomes so toxic, you don't hope it gets better. You liquidate. I looked at my father, who was already smiling at the investor, smoothing his jacket like nothing had happened. Then I checked my watch. 29 minutes to midnight. That was enough time. Enough time to burn his entire empire to the ground. Have you ever had a family member treat you like an ATM but look at you like you were dirt? Tell me in the comments. I am reading every single one. I stepped back into the shadows of the ballroom, pulling Mina close to my side. The music swelled again, drowning out the moment, erasing it as if it never happened. That was Victor's greatest talent, rewriting reality until the ugly parts simply ceased to exist. To the people in this room, I was just Farah, the quiet, mousy daughter who didn't have the charisma of her father or the flash of her sister. They looked right through me, assuming I was there to manage the catering or drive the drunk relatives home. They didn't know who I really was. My name is Farah, and I'm 32 years old. I'm not just a silent observer. I'm a senior risk analyst for a Fortune 500 firm. My job isn't to fix problems after they happen. It is to predict collapses before the first crack appears. I spend my days auditing instability, calculating the exact moment a system will fail. And yet, ironically, I had missed the biggest, most volatile risk, sitting right under my own nose for over a decade. For 10 years, I wasn't treated like a daughter. I was treated like the family's silent insurance policy. A break glass in case of emergency fund that breathed. Standing there, watching Victor charm a man worth $50 million. I thought about the receipts I had mentally filed away for years. I remembered the panic in his voice 7 years ago when his first shell company imploded. He needed legal fees covered immediately to avoid an audit. I wired him $40,000, my entire savings at the time. I ate instant noodles for 6 months to replenish it. He never said thank you. He just told me I was doing my duty. I looked over at my sister, Jade, who was currently laughing loudly near the champagne fountain, posing for a selfie. 5 years ago, she needed seed money for a fashion brand that never produced a single shirt. Victor pressured me into co-signing the loans because family invests in family. I ended up paying off every cent of that loan when she got bored and moved on to being a lifestyle influencer. The math of our relationship was simple, and it was brutal. I drove a 10-year-old sedan with a check engine light that I taped over because I couldn't afford the repair. They leased brand new Porsches every 2 years. I lived in a 400-square-foot studio apartment with thin walls, so Victor could maintain the mortgage payments on this sprawling, gaudy mansion. I sacrificed my comfort, my security, and my future to subsidize their illusion of wealth. They took my money with a sense of absolute entitlement, snatching the checks from my hand without making eye contact. Yet they despised my presence. To them, I was a utility bill necessary, boring, and resented. They wanted the cash flow, but they didn't want the person attached to it. I used to tell myself that if I just gave enough, if I just saved them one more time, they would finally see me as valuable. But as I watched Victor smooth his tuxedo jacket, completely unbothered by the fact that he had just assaulted my child, I realized the truth. I wasn't a member of this family. I was just the help. And the help was about to resign. The specific cruelty that broke me didn't happen tonight on this ballroom floor. It happened 6 months ago, on a Tuesday morning, when my phone vibrated with a credit monitoring alert. It was a fraud warning, the kind I usually see on my clients' accounts when a hacker gets lucky. But this time, the name on the account was mine. A home equity line of credit had been opened in my name against a property I didn't even know was linked to my credit profile. The amount was $450,000. I didn't panic. I didn't call the police immediately. I did what I do best. I audited the trail. One look at the digital signature logs confirmed it wasn't a stranger in a basement in Eastern Europe. It was Victor. He had used my social security number, which he had kept on file from years ago when he insisted on helping me file my taxes to maximize my returns. He hadn't just borrowed money. He had stolen my identity. He forged my signature, Used my credit score, the one I had built meticulously while living in that tiny apartment, to secure a massive loan. And then, he drained it. I sat at my desk that morning, staring at the screen, and I waited for the tears to come. I waited for the heartbreak, the betrayal, the crushing weight of knowing my own father would bankrupt me to fund his vanity. But the tears never came. Instead, a cold, familiar clarity settled over me. In the world of high-stakes investment, we have a concept called the valuation mindset. When an asset becomes toxic, you don't get emotional. You don't hope it turns around. You don't throw good money after bad. You execute a stop-loss order. You cut the cord immediately to preserve whatever capital remains. Victor wasn't my father anymore. He was a toxic asset, a liability that was hemorrhaging value. And tonight, when he put his hands on my daughter, he didn't just cross a moral line. He hit my stop-loss limit. I realized then that the relationship I thought we had was a lie. I wasn't his child. I was his offshore account. I was a place for him to hide his debt and extract value whenever he needed a liquidity injection. He didn't love me. He leveraged me. And the thing about leverage is that it works both ways. If you lean too hard on a support beam that you've rotted out from the inside, eventually, the whole structure comes down on your head. I looked at him across the room now, laughing with the lead investor, clinking his champagne glass. He looked so safe. He looked so arrogant. He thought that because I hadn't screamed about the loan 6 months ago, I was ignorant. He thought I was the same compliant daughter who paid his legal fees and kept his secrets. He didn't know that for the last half year, I hadn't been sulking. I had been building a case. I had been gathering every single piece of paper, every digital footprint, every lie he had ever told. He thought he was using me to save his empire. He didn't realize he had handed the auditor the keys to the vault. Back in the ballroom, the air was thick with the smell of expensive perfume and deceit. I watched my sister, Jade, holding court near the open bar. She was laughing at a joke the lead investor made, flashing a diamond bracelet that caught the light of the chandeliers. She told everyone it was a reward for her hard work as the family's creative director. I touched the leather bag hanging from my shoulder. It was heavy, not with makeup or party favors, but with the cold, hard weight of a digital execution. Inside was my laptop, and on its hard drive was a folder named The Red Report. I had spent the last 48 hours compiling it. When you work in risk analysis, you learn that data doesn't lie. People lie. Numbers just wait to be found. The first part of the report was the forensic trail of the money he stole from me. I didn't need to hack anything. He was sloppy. He used the same password for his business accounts as he did for the family Netflix. I logged in and downloaded 5 years of transaction history. The $450,000 he stripped from my equity didn't go to saving his company or paying vendors. It went to the Golden Palace Casino in Las Vegas. It went to a lease on a Porsche Cayenne for Jade. It went to maintaining the illusion of a tycoon for a man who was drowning in debt. He had literally mortgaged my future to pay for his ego. The second piece of evidence was fresher. Just yesterday, Victor had staged a dramatic scene in the kitchen, claiming his lucky gold Rolex had vanished. He had made a point of asking Mina if she had been playing in his bedroom, planting the seed that my daughter was a thief. He wanted a scapegoat in case he needed to explain the loss to his insurance company. He didn't know about my car. My beat-up sedan was parked across the street from the family's favorite pawn shop yesterday afternoon. I have a dashcam that records motion when the engine is off. I pulled the footage this morning. It was crystal clear. It showed Jade walking into the shop with the gold Rolex in her hand and walking out 5 minutes later counting a stack of cash. Victor knew Jade took it. He always knew. But blaming Mina was easier than admitting his golden child was a pawnbroker's regular. But the final page of the report was the one that made my hands steady. It was the variable Victor had used to control me my entire life. Since I was 5, he had hinted, joked, and sometimes outright screamed that I wasn't his biological daughter. He used it to explain why he loved Jade more, why he was harder on me, why I deserved less. "You don't have my fire," he'd say. "You're weak, like your mother's side." I held the envelope in my bag. I had swiped his hairbrush 2 weeks ago. The lab results came back yesterday. 99.99% probability of paternity. He wasn't just a thief and a bully. He was a liar who had weaponized his own bloodline to justify abuse. I looked at the clock. 11:45. The investors were gathering near the stage for the midnight toast. Victor was tapping a spoon against a crystal glass, calling for attention. He looked like a king holding court. He had no idea that the quiet daughter in the corner wasn't there to applaud. I was there to present the findings, and the audit was complete. The air in the ballroom had shifted. It was 11:45. The ambient jazz had faded, replaced by the low, eager hum of money waiting to be moved. The investors were gathering near the stage, swirling their drinks, checking their watches. They were the sharks, circling the water, looking for blood or opportunity. Victor stood at the podium, basking in the attention. He looked the part of the titan he desperately wanted to be, chest out, chin up, a flute of champagne held high like a scepter. "This family is built on integrity," he bellowed into the microphone, his voice booming off the vaulted ceiling. "We value loyalty above all else. When you invest with Victor Enterprises, you aren't just buying a portfolio. You're buying into a legacy." I stood in the shadows near the console, watching him perform. It was a masterclass in deception. He believed his own lies. That was his superpower. He genuinely believed he was a man of honor. Even as he stood on a foundation built from my stolen credit and his daughter's tears, he scanned the room, his eyes glazing over the faces of the people he owed money to, until they landed on me. He blinked. Then he smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of a man who just found a useful prop. He waved me over, his motion grand and expansive. "Come here, Farah. Come stand by your sister." He didn't want me there to speak. He wanted the tableau. The successful father, the glamorous creative daughter Jade, and the quiet, sensible daughter Farah. The complete set. He wanted to show the investors that his house was in order. He thought I was cowed. He thought that because I hadn't screamed when he pushed Mina, I was back in my box, ready to play the role of the dutiful, silent support staff. He thought I was just waiting to drive the drunk relatives home after the confetti fell. I walked toward the stage. The clicking of my heels on the marble echoed in the sudden quiet. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't afraid. I felt a strange, icy calm. The kind that settles over you right before you pull the trigger. I walked past Jade, who rolled her eyes and took a sip of her drink. I walked up the stairs to the podium. Victor draped a heavy arm around my shoulder. It felt like a yoke. He leaned into the mic. "My oldest. Farah. She's not the creative genius like Jade," he laughed, a condescending sound that invited the room to chuckle along. "But she tries. She keeps us grounded." He tried to pull the microphone away, signaling my part was done. I didn't let go. I tightened my grip on the stand. "Actually, Dad," I said, my voice amplified, crisp and clear across the hall, "I have a special contribution for the investors tonight." Victor paused. He looked confused for a fraction of a second, but his ego filled in the gap. He thought I had prepared a tribute, a speech about his greatness, a testament to his fatherhood, to seal the deal. He smiled, benevolent and unsuspecting. "Go ahead, honey. The floor is yours." I reached into my bag and pulled out the HDMI cable I had prepped earlier. I plugged it into the podium's console with a decisive click. The connection hummed. "You always taught me to do my due diligence before closing a big deal," I said, looking out at the sea of expectant faces. "So, I prepared a risk assessment for everyone here." Victor nodded, still smiling, still clueless, watching the giant screen behind him flicker to life. He walked right into the trap, convinced he owned the building. He didn't realize he was standing on a trap door, and I had just pulled the lever. I hit enter. The giant screen behind Victor didn't flicker. It didn't buffer. It snapped instantly from the benign blue of the company logo to a jarring, violent red. The text was massive, bold, and impossible to ignore. "Warning. Critical solvency risk." A hush fell over the room that was so absolute it felt like the air had been sucked out of the ventilation system. The clinking of silverware stopped. The murmur of polite conversation died. The only sound was the hum of the projector fan and the sudden, shallow breathing of the man standing next to me. Victor turned around. He looked at the screen, then back at the audience, his smile faltering into a confused grimace. "Technical difficulties," he stammered, reaching for the laptop cord. "Just a prank. Farah, unplug that." I didn't unplug it. I clicked next. "Slide 1, I said, my voice steady, echoing off the marble walls. The capital injection. The screen filled with high-resolution scans of loan documents. On the left, the home equity line of credit application opened in my name 6 months ago. On the right, a forensic handwriting analysis overlay. "This is a $450,000 credit line opened using my social security number," I explained to the room of bankers and investors. "As you can see, the signature is a forgery. The IP address used to originate the loan traces back to the router in this very house." I saw the lead investor, a man known for his ruthlessness and due diligence, put on his glasses. He leaned forward. "But where did the capital go?" I asked rhetorically. "Did it go to research and development? Did it go to infrastructure?" Click. The screen split into a timeline. On the left were the dates of the withdrawal transfers. On the right were the corresponding receipts I had pulled from Victor's email trash bin. October 12th. $50,000 wired to the Golden Palace Casino. November 4th. $12,000 for a lease down payment on a Porsche Cayenne registered to Jade. I looked at my sister. She was standing by the bar, her glass halfway to her mouth. Her face had drained of all color, leaving her makeup looking like a mask on a corpse. The guests turned to look at her, then at the car keys sitting on the table in front of her. This company isn't seeking investment, I said cold. It is seeking a bailout for a gambling addiction and a lifestyle that hasn't been solvent since 2014. Victor lunged for the laptop. Stop this, she's crazy. She's off her meds. I stepped aside, letting him stumble, and clicked again. And regarding the integrity of management, the video player opened yesterday's dashcam footage, grainy but undeniable. Jade walked into the 4th Street pawn shop with a flash of gold, then walked out calmly counting a thick stack of cash. Yesterday, Victor accused my 9-year-old daughter of theft to cover his own asset liquidation, I said. He assaulted a child to protect a thief. That's the CEO you're about to fund. Number 4. The room's silence shifted from shock to disgust. Victor wasn't angry anymore, he was shaking with the realization that the daughter he'd ignored for 30 years had just erased him in 3 minutes. Gentlemen, please, he stammered, palms out. It's a family dispute. It's complicated. It's not complicated. I cut in. It's math. I didn't raise my voice. In my world, you don't scream at a collapsing graph, you present the data. This is bad debt, Victor. You didn't just steal my money. You stole my credit, my safety, and my life to hide your insolvency. He snapped, desperate for a weapon. You're not my daughter. You're a bastard, bad blood. I smiled. That was the final variable. Let's talk about that. Click. The last slide appeared. A genetic test PDF. 2 profiles. 1 probability highlighted in bright yellow. 99.99%. For 30 years you told everyone I was illegitimate, I said, voice low and lethal. You used that lie to justify treating me like nothing while Jade got everything. I turned to the lead investor and held his gaze. Here's the science. I am his biological daughter. Which means his cruelty wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. And if he can lie about his own blood for decades, imagine what he's doing to your balance sheets. I pointed at the screen. A man with no moral credit has no financial credit. The lead investor stood. His chair scraped the floor like a verdict. We're done here. The investors filed out, one after another, taking Victor's future with them. Under the red glow of the screen, he stood alone at the podium, hollow and ruined. You ruined everything, he whispered. No, Dad, I said, unplugging my laptop. I just audited the books. When the last limousine disappeared into the night, the ballroom felt like the aftermath of a collapsed confetti, half-finished champagne, and the wreckage of a family finally reaching its expiration date. Victor stormed down the steps, feral and cornered. Get out. This is my house. I own this land. I'll sue you for everything. I didn't flinch. His thunder didn't scare me anymore. It was just noise. Actually, Victor, I said, pulling out a blue folder. You don't. It wasn't a lawsuit. It was a deed transfer. 10 years ago, when you were terrified the IRS would audit your shell company, you hid your assets, I said, stepping closer. You put this mansion into an irrevocable trust. You made yourself trustee, but you needed a beneficiary. Victor froze. You didn't use Jade. She was reckless. So you used me, the responsible daughter who would never read the fine print. I opened to the highlighted section. Clause 9b. The bad boy provision. You added it to protect yourself. But the wording cuts both ways. I held it up. If the trustee commits a felony against the beneficiary, identity theft, wire fraud, assault, the trustee is removed for cause. Legal title immediately vests in the beneficiary. Victor's mouth opened. Nothing came out. I filed the police report 3 hours ago, I said, and 10 minutes ago, my attorney filed the deed transfer through the county clerk's emergency portal. This isn't your house anymore. It's mine. And you're trespassing. He turned, desperate, toward my mother. Elena, tell her. I looked at her 30 years of silence, and tonight she watched him shove Mina onto marble without blinking. You saw him push my child, I said. You stayed silent my whole life. Stay silent while you pack. You're evicted too. Then I walked to the security team by the doors. I'm the property owner, I told the head guard, showing the deed on my phone. They're refusing to leave. Remove them. He checked the document, looked at Victor, and nodded. Yes, ma'am. Victor screamed as they grabbed his arms. Don't touch me. I'm the king. This is my castle. They dragged him out the way he tried to drag my name through the mud publicly, loudly, without dignity. Jade followed, wailing. My mother walked out last, eyes wet with fear. I didn't blink. I locked the door. 3 weeks later, the fallout was total. Victor was out on bail, living in a motel, facing federal charges for wire fraud and identity theft. The investors cooperated with prosecutors. He still texted me begging, threatening, bargaining. I never replied. Every message went into a folder labeled evidence. Jade tried to sell her version to a tabloid, but without proof. Nobody bought it. Last I heard, she was working retail, trying to pay off a pawn loan on a watch she never owned. I sold the mansion. It moved in 4 days. Too big, too cold, too full of ghosts. I paid off the fraudulent debt, repaired my credit, and bought a small, sturdy house by the ocean. Big backyard for Mina. High-tech security for me. Right now, I'm on the back porch watching her build a sandcastle. It isn't grand. It's messy and small. But it's hers. She looks up and waves, smiling like a kid who's finally safe. I sip my coffee and check my phone. Credit score. 800. Heart rate. Steady. Audit closed. Risk mitigated. Asset secured. If you've ever had to audit your own family to survive, hit subscribe. We're building a portfolio of survivors here.